Hello, I'm Mulgrim. I am the host of the GrimTalk podcast that features Psychochild. We discussed game development, game design, community management, anything that went into designing, making, or playing an MMO. We would discuss it because MMOs were something that we both loved. I've had the hardest time getting myself to upload our videos into the archive because listening to him is one of the hardest things I can do, knowing he's gone. But please enjoy this episode of the podcast, and I will see you after the video. Let me get on the twits. Do that twitzering. The twizzlerling. Oh, I was proud of myself. I made a very clever Twitter yesterday, or this morning.
Oh, did you?
I'm not typing up shit. I'm just gonna retweet you. How's that for sad?
I mean, I did that like a couple weeks ago, I think. I was like, I'm gonna retweet you.
Yeah, I said, oh, the beachgoers will go out and hang out during pandemic, but they won't do it during a hurricane. Cowards.
Nice.
I was very proud of myself. I think all of like 3 people saw it. But oof, that hurricane stuff, right?
Right. No, we didn't get too bad, but I heard like Philadelphia was flooded. I was getting pretty heavy flooding.
Ellicott City survived for once. That was a miracle. Ellicott City's a little bit ways out there city from me. And they're notorious for flooding. Like they urbanized a whole bunch of their streets and regions around the main city, and when it rains there, it's just Main Street is a giant river. Like just very poorly designed setup. City planning, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, I mean, I've heard people kind of complain about. So, I mean, like, people. It's I grew up in the Midwest, and like a lot of places, there's floodplains. You're like, oh, people shouldn't build in floodplains. It's like, you know why the people built in floodplains? Because that was like the best farmland. Like,
right,
you know, and so you had farms kind of grow up, and then trading happened in cities, and like like nobody, like people a couple hundred years ago weren't like thinking, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't build here because eventually it's going to become, flooding is going to be a huge problem. So
I always laugh at California, like Northern California, just how much of a bad place that is to live, just environmentally speaking.
But the weather is fucking beautiful there. So
I said northern, not southern.
No, northern. No. That's what I mean. Northern California, the weather is amazing. There's one city in the San Francisco Bay Area called Redwood City, where the sign over the city says, and I think it's bullshit, but like it says, "Climate best by government test." like but like literally like almost all the year is like it's like in the like 70s or 80s. Like it is like like there's some rain in the spring. Yeah, it gets hot for maybe like a week or two in the summer. But like the rest of the time, it is absolutely beautiful. Yes, you have to put up with earthquakes. Yeah, you have to put up with water shortages. Yeah, you have to put up with kind of a lot of other stuff. But it is beautiful, and like wildfires. Are we live yet?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to get into a political rant about wildfires, but
I mean, I can mute you for a second if you want.
no.
Oh,
this is not important enough.
Oh my god, we are dropping frames.
All right.
We have.
Are you dropping warframes?
65%.
Well, that's like either your warframe or my warframe has been gone.
Oh my goodness.
What did you do? What did you do?
Drop frames. That's an internet thing. Like that's not.
Oh. Did you stop your porn downloads before you start streaming?
Yeah, they are Microsoft, but I launched a game in Steam. What the fuck is doing that? Oh, give me a second.
You didn't stop all the porn, did you?
Shut up. One sec. Google Drive is syncing. I wonder if that's causing it.
Well, almost certainly causing it.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Maybe that stopped it. Nope, we're still dropping frames. Holy shit.
Oh my god.
Hold on. We're improving. My bitrate just went up. Okay, I think we're good. I gotta get rid of that syncing bullshit.
Or maybe see if you can't schedule it for more appropriate times when you're not, awake.
Well, when I'm not awake, my computer's turned off. I'll work on it. Hi everyone. I think we're good now.
Good.
Professional streamers.
Yeah. How's everybody tonight, though? It's been quite the weekend. Just in news of the weird, I live in an area that has a lot of Asian grocery stores, so I get Japanese Kit Kats. If you've never had Japanese Kit Kats, they're really interesting because they have like all sorts of flavors. They're very small bars. They're only 2 bars. They're about like maybe, I don't know, maybe about 2 inches long. They're not very big.
They're like fun size.
But they get all sorts. Right. But they get all sorts of crazy flavors. Like one of my favorites currently is this banana that was released for Easter. Like the bag has like bunnies and eggs that you can color, and the whole package is Japanese. So I mean, this is not a U.S. thing. This is a Japanese, basically a
import
confectionery company. Right. And so yeah, basically they import the bags to supermarkets here, Asian supermarkets. But one of the flavors I got was ocean salt, which is like super sweet vanilla with a salty tang to it. It's interesting.
That's not
gonna say it's my favorite.
Is that what the ocean salt tastes like in Japan?
I don't know. Well, a friend of mine was talking about like like they like sea salt ice cream, which is basically that. It's basically vanilla ice cream with sea salt added to it.
Okay, if you
So
say so. Because our ocean tastes like flesh-eating bacteria. I don't know what they're talking about.
well, I mean, you taste it once, you don't have a tongue to taste it again. So, are you sure? You can't do a backup verification.
It's a partial digestion. You get it's one of those things where you get a little more of the flavor every time.
Green tea Kit Kats are amazing too. Yes.
Okay, you ready to start running
One of my
stuff?
favorite flavors was what is it called? I think it's called kuromisu, which is basically like roughly translates to black honey. It's like a dark, thick syrup they use for flavoring. Oh my god, it was so amazing. I've only had those once. Like a friend of mine like was flying back from Southeast Asia. I don't remember what country he's visiting, but he basically flew through Tokyo, and in the this is basically what started me on my love affair with Japanese Kit Kats. He basically got a package of these Kuromitsu, and yeah. But now I live near Asian supermarkets in the U.S. and I get all sorts of things. I got like raspberry flavor and strawberry and mint citrus and lemon. Yeah, good stuff. But yeah, let's go. We're gonna do some railjack tonight since we got some
Some XP
affinity bonus
bonuses.
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've proven we can tear through that pretty easily.
Right.
Oh, why did it booted you out of the squad?
Because I have too many weapons, I have to scrap some wreckage.
Oh.
It
Okay.
doesn't warn me about this until you actually launch.
Okay, oh abort. Wow. Just fucking wow. So what are we talking about today, Sai?
About games not giving you fucking warnings before he tries to queue you and dump you out of the party.
Huh, that's oddly specific. Huh. That's weird.
Right?
Oh, my microphone's not picking me up again. That's fantastic. Hold on,
Let me I'm gonna go to the clan dojo so that I can actually see what I'm destroying.
Yeah, you gotta
instead
do
of
that through the...
No, well, it'll pop up an interface, but it's like, do you want to destroy this weapon? We were not gonna give you the stats.
Oh,
thank you.
I found the issue with getting my bonuses.
Hmm.
The Twitch was not properly linking on the Warframe website.
Oh, well, I think I just crashed. Going to the...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's gonna be that sort of night, huh?
I guess so. Okay, I'm gonna log it out and log back in. Oh, wait a second. I don't want to do that yet. Because you guys can see my fucking login.
Oh. Dun, dun, dun.
Where is that setting? Is it display? I know it's at the bottom of the menu somewhere. It's like creator mode.
So there's a streamer mode for you're talking about Warframe.
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
What the fuck did I just? I just gotta find it again. Streamer mode. Where are you? I could have sworn. Oh, creator mode. There it is. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, I turned it on just so it didn't bother. I didn't get the little so I didn't get my operator bothering me all the time.
Well, you can turn that off independently. And you don't have fake Space Mom? Oh, it still showed my email.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
I know. Professional streaming.
Well, everyone knows you're big dick, 6969 at AOL.com, so it's fine.
It's Hotmail. Thank you very much.
Oh, I got my boosters in my inventory, so.
Yep, I just got mine, so we good. Let's see what this. Okay, that is like blindingly bright on my screen. I'm not using that on Titania. Fuck that. Anyways. So today, okay, we haven't even talked about what we're talking about today. Fuck.
You introduce it because I need to.
Fuck. So I've been getting into the Twitters lately, and I've been following like indie game developers because I find I think that's a good place to get like topic ideas and stuff like that. And one thing that I noticed that keeps popping up in my feed is the Unity asset store. And I thought that could be something interesting for us to talk about tonight. The difference in I'm not as read up into Yandere dev right now as I could be. And that's, I mean, we could talk about it a little bit, but it's kind of controversial. But I'm not as read up on that topic as I should be. But so I just kind of, I thought it could be fun if we just talked about the weights and differences of using asset stores, assets as opposed to having homebrewed assets. And when I approached I got really excited, so that's what I thought we'd talk about today. I apologize if I'm low energy. I'm fucking low energy, man.
It happens.
More low energy. Well, I think everyone here knows what I'm dealing with, so.
Right.
It's all good. What were you gonna say? Say it, you fuck.
Whoa.
I'm sorry, did I get a aggro there?
Yeah, that was a little warm fuzzy.
My bad.
Well, I think that I think I mean, like just speaking in general, like the asset store has been a big thing for indie development because like it really kind of helped a lot of independent developers kind of like get used to or basically be able to get up to speed faster, even if nothing else, even if you want to do your hand drawn assets, it's one of those things that if you want to do hand drawn assets, you like being able to basically buy assets and kind of throw it in kind of help you with things like doing a demo or like yeah, showing like you basically like they look like really nice placeholders. Because like actual placeholders usually look terrible, and like often that's one of the issues you run into is that people will be like, oh well, that looks awful, and it takes some skill to be able to go look at something and say, oh okay, I can see the potential here.
Oh, I should have installed Starforge just to show off what bad assets look like. Cause, oh my god. Yeah, and you see that a lot in some asset like bundles, cause you can get like source assets. With like the source movie maker software and a bunch of other Valve products. And that gives you access to Valve specific assets like Team Fortress, Half-Life, Portal assets. And I think once you have the software, you can actually export it into other things as long as it's non-commercial. If I remember correctly, it's possible to do that because then you get like Gary's mod where you can just take all that and make a game mod basically. Pumpkin says I think it's called asset flipping. Well, yeah.
Right.
You ready to go?
No, sorry. I was like.
I mean that's fair, Pumpkin. I think asset flipping has more implications than what I'm referring to, but that's fair. So, but yeah, so wow, this topic did not go as far as I thought it'd be.
Sorry, like, just let me concentrate a minute. Let me get this done so we can actually play.
No,
Sorry.
I don't wanna. You can't make me.
I'm gonna fucking mute you.
Well, that's gonna make a very boring podcast.
I mean, nobody listens to you anyway.
I mean, fucking fair. I don't even fucking listen to me. What the fuck am I talking about again?
Yeah, and so, but even if you're not, and so like you can build game using assets. Like I was doing a game with a friend of mine where we were basically using asset store assets, but like the focus of the game was not on the focus of the game was not on the assets. The focus of the game was on the content of the game. It's basically kind of like a it's almost like a more of a visual novel type of thing. Because it was like the story of it was basically you get kind of like a you get basically captured by an AI, and so it's all about basically kind of like interacting with this AI as it kind of like tries to use you as a stand-in for all of humanity. And so like like the areas you were kind of wandering around areas while you were kind of doing this, and so like, we kind of like and so like the it wasn't very important for it to be like look like really interesting. Like the interesting part was basically the interactions. And so and so basically Um, why does this have to be so difficult?
So I just got sent a wiki page by Zara defining asset flipping.
Mm-hmm.
It is Asset flipping is a term that refers to the practice of building a game almost entirely out of pre-made assets with little original work. They are more commonly found on Steam, being sold for cheap prices. Valve Corporation refers to asset flips as quote-unquote fake games.
Mm-hmm.
And that, well, I mean, like, yeah, that's fair. There's a company that was notorious for it, and they were very toxic about it, called Digital Homicide. Um, and they were notorious for just making the same game over and over with like different pre-made assets and like
Mm-hmm.
different textures, but it was basically the same games, like the same like cheap puzzle games. Like they'd make like Bejeweled ripoffs, but then they'd make like 6 different versions with different themed textures, basically.
Right.
And they'd make like these really shitty like first-person shooters that just had the worst graphics and assets imaginable. Um, Thankfully, they got banned from Steam.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, the idea of the asset store is that you're supposed to. Actually, hold on a second.
Take it and then modify it for your purposes.
Right, or like you're supposed to come up. I mean, basically, like what I was talking about. Like, we came up with this interesting and original game. But the idea was that, like, we were doing this. Um, we were basically doing this. Okay, I'm ready to go now.
Okay.
We were doing this, like, to create a new game. Like, we were doing this because, like, assets are expensive to produce. Right. Like, yeah, like, nobody should be surprised by this. Like, the art is very expensive to do. Like, I mean, that was always kind of my problem as an indie dev, was basically that I could find programmers, I could do programming, like, but finding artists that would be, that were able to kind of do things without charging an arm and a leg. And, again, like, to be fair, they need to eat, so, like, I'm not, bemoaning them, but, like, I was never able to I was able to find a lot of programmers who were, willing to. Right. I found a lot of programmers that were able to kind of do programmers that were able to, that were willing to do things. They were willing to kind of, like, do programming, on the cheap. Because, like, a lot of programmers have kind of well-paying day jobs, so,
Wow, are you saying artists don't have day jobs? No, I'm kidding.
I'm saying they don't have day jobs that pay as well as the programmers do. I think most artists will agree with that.
Fair. I love this setup I have on this ship. Why can't I see bad guys?
I had that.
Okay, it's working out. Oh, I gotta close my preview out. I'm lagging. I lag a little more on Railjack. It's not quite as optimized.
Right. So, and so, like, the idea, like, it's kind of encouraged some bad behavior, like what you kind of describe with, people just basically kind of, like, creating rip-off game or creating same game and creating, basically, like, creating an awful game, awful derivative game, Like this is never kind of the intention of it, but like, that's kind of what just kind of what happened. But it's kind of supposed to help indie devs who were like in my position, where where they wanted, yeah, where essentially like they wanted to make a game, they didn't have art assets, they bought art assets. And like the disadvantage of like doing that is of course like if somebody else buys those same assets and uses those assets, it looks terrible. Like it looks like someone will look at those assets and say, oh well, that was that's the same gems from Jewel Clone 5, obviously, and that was kind of a crap game, so obviously this is not going to be a great game either. But but on the flip side of that is that it kind of really helped people make games and kind of get their game ideas out there. I think like I think part of it also there is the realization of like how much the assets kind of like do play into making a good game. Like because I played this one game like it's been taking my time recently, a single player game called Sundered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mentioned it to you.
Yeah, you
and like
it's roguelike, Metroidvania.
Yeah. It's a really kind of it's a very beautiful game though, like because it has like this really like lush hand drawn visuals. Like and this is something like like you notice that like this it kind of adds to the feeling of the game. This feeling of the game just really kind of looking really nice. It's got like these like just kind of like really neat animated enemies that look kind of like really kind of. There's these one enemies they're called aberrations, which are like like they're like a mass of tentacles kind of like covered by like a cloth, and like you can just see enough of the tentacles, and the tentacles like will shoot out and try to capture you too. It just like it looks like super creepy. It's like something that like you don't get from. It's something that fits very much with the feel of the game, because it's supposed to be kind of like like mild spoilers. It's supposed to be basically a little bit like inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. So it's not very clear about that at the beginning, but like you kind of you kind of get to that once you see like there's names like Nyarlathotep and whatnot. But like like the hand drawn style adds to the kind of the feel of the game, because it really does feel like a real it kind of like it helps kind of reinforce a lot of the themes in the game. And so like this is something you wouldn't necessarily get with generic asset store assets that you bought. It's something that basically you really get from having a hand-drawn assets that were made specifically for the game.
Right. Like could you imagine like a Zelda game that borrowed sprites from RPG Maker 27 SL?
Right. Well, I think, but talking about things like that, like a lot of the games kind of get their sprites ripped off. Like for example, like these, like the 2D Zelda games, like especially
Link to the Past.
Link to the Past, yeah. In particular, get their sprites ripped off all the time. Why? Because they're very distinctive. They're very,
they're gorgeous.
They are gorgeous. Like I think there's a lot of and it's really hard to do that. Like like you think like 2D art, that's easy, that's simple. It's like no, actually, it's a lot harder than you might think.
Try looking for pixel artists for like Twitch emotes. There's like I had a really hard time. Like I gave up trying to do like because I had the thought of pixel art emotes. I'm like, oh, that'd be nice. I love sprite work and. But like all the pixel artists I was looking up, it did not look fantastic.
Right.
Because instead of making instead of actually rendering pixel art, they were just using this they were using this program that you can make pixel art on, but it's like 8-bit pixel art instead of 16-bit.
Right. Well, I mean, like, and there's a certain art and to creating pixel art. Like you can't just like shove it into a program and get out good pixel art. Like I was watching this one person that was making a game jam game.
Mm-hmm.
And they were obviously a programmer and art artist because they were making art for their game jam. Because a game jam, for those of you who don't know, is basically there's a theme. You get a theme and then you get like a limited amount of time, usually like something like 48 hours to make a game. And so like part of the interest there is to basically try to I jumped into the near ship. Is to basically try to kind of like come up with a game real quick. The idea being that you're kind of like you're basically just trying to kind of like throw out ideas without kind of worrying too much about details. And the idea being that basically you're trying to kind of like create
And don't some game jams have like a competitive nature to them? Like they get like best game voting on them or stuff like that.
Right. I mean, sometimes they will. Usually, the idea is for most people is that you just kind of want to, to get in there and just kind of create a game. Right. Yeah, because creating a full playable game in like literal 48 hours is not easy. It's just it's quite the challenge. And so because you have to kind of go quick, but like a lot of times people kind of like play around with ideas in game jams, and then sometimes you create something more complex. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about originally, the idea of a game, a prototype where you kind of like use asset store assets for as kind of the stand-in.
Yeah. There's one game jam game that I remember checking out one time, and it was a goofy side scroller game where you were like a fisherman and you'd fish up fish, and then you'd literally like battle fish to death to cook them. And it turned to it was like a weird like puzzle game for the fishing, and then it was like a Smash Brothers beat 'em up for the cooking.
Okay.
It was crazy.
Right.
But it was fun as all heck.
Right, I mean, and that's kind of the point of a lot of the game jam games is to kind of sometimes you're just scrambling for what the fuck ever.
Right.
Yeah, so, and so you can't just you're not gonna.
I wonder if I can find that game again.
Yeah, and so it becomes one of those things where and so something like asset store assets for a game jam, it makes perfect sense because you can basically kind of get there might be restrictions on that and whatnot in some game jams and whatnot, but but that idea of let's just create a game in a weekend. Right. Let's not sweat and I need to go get these all these details and stuff I got a bunch of cheap assets. I spent I threw down $50. I got the like some sprites and whatnot. Let's just create something with these. And so yeah, like that becomes that kind of like lets you focus on making the game or finding the game, rather than sweating things like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to take some time to make some art to really, just like I said, like this person was just like, he's like, oh, I think I just need to put some random pixels here to make it look good, and I was like, no, that's not what pixel art is, but okay.
Right,
I mean,
right.
the end result was not bad, but like it was not like, no, like, you're not. You're the kid with fucking giant crayons trying to recreate a
The Mona
Renaissance
Lisa.
masterpiece. Right.
Or the Sistine
It's like,
Chapel.
no, like that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. No.
That would be me though. I just pointing out.
I mean, but fair. I mean, to be fair, that's most people. I mean, that's me too. Like, I'm not. I guess I have made a couple of, but the thing, like, the thing is like, it takes me forever to make anything that look good in pixel art. Like, and like, I'm not, this is not my specialty. This is not what I'm good at.
I mean, I tried making my own pixel art because a friend linked me like the program that pixel art artists use.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't end well because like I have the image, I have it in me, I have it in my brain unit, but
Right.
I couldn't. The issue with non-artist people is it's in the brain, but that doesn't want to come out. It's
Right.
very shy.
Right. No, that's that's definitely kind of one of the issues you run into, is that, like, being able to express yourself. I mean, that's the big thing with any creative expression, is that you is that like, being able to express yourself, particularly with the tools and whatnot. Like, because it can be really hard to create stuff with tools. Like, if you don't know the tools, so it can be really hard to create things.
I mean, I'm learning that with the video editing.
Right.
I'll
I
know,
mean,
like, the transition I want to make, but then I have to figure out how to fucking make it.
right, and like, but yeah, like, so you definitely have that kind of feeling of, oh, I know what I want it to look like, but I do not have the skills to actually make it look like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's another thing kind of helps with the asset store. Like, if you use asset store assets, is you're like, oh, okay, I know what I want. Oh, that looks like what I want, rather than, okay, let me spend hours in a program and get something that like only disappoints.
Hey, kind of like that artist I was working with.
Right.
I'm not salty. I don't know what you're talking about. You're salty.
That cruise ship. Right. No. But yeah, I think it's obvious that I think it's pretty obvious that people like that it kind of ties back into what we were talking about last time, like kind of evaluating the quality of creative work can be really hard, because it basically, like, it's not easy to do this stuff, like like a lot of times, like, people who don't know, who don't understand, like, can basically, like, really kind of underestimate the complexity of what it takes to make some stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder. I think. Let me think this statement through a minute. Modding, like game mods or making fan games. That's
Right.
kind of an interesting exercise in maybe not being able to generate assets, but having an idea.
Right. I mean, I think like another interesting topic we should talk about sometime is like like the game idea. like, because that's one of the biggest things you get, like, if you're a professional game developer,
Mm-hmm.
is people come up to you and say, oh, I've got a great idea for a game, and like, my response being, of course you do, we all do, you know what? Unless you're signing checks, you don't get to make your idea, and guess what, I don't get to make my idea unless I get, unless I become proven or I start signing checks,
Right.
like,
right.
And so but yeah, I mean, like, but you get a little bit of that where, like ideas are easy and execution is hard, and like coming up with an idea, and coming up with an idea that's actually feasible is actually really fucking hard. Like,
Right.
like it is actually super hard to basically kind of be able to spot good ideas from bad. Like, one of the things that I talk about is like early on in my game dev career, Shigeru Miyamoto, like the head god of the pantheon of game designers, who made Mario and several Nintendo hits.
Sorry, who's
I remember going, Shigeru Miyamoto.
Who?
Oh my god. You're terrible.
One sec. We got bit alerts happening.
Uh-oh. Have you been visited by the Void Moon Fairy?
Void Moo, and I quote, "Wahoo!"
I am glad she's in a good mood.
She's in a very Mario mood. I guess because we spoke of the god
Shigeru Miyamoto and Wario. Right. But anyway, so I was at a game developers conference, and he's basically giving a major speech, might have been the keynote speech or whatnot, and then he gets talking about like, oh, I want to show you the next thing I'm working on, and like that thing was like this camera attachment for the original Game Boy. I'm aging myself here really bad, but yeah, like he like and I just kind of looked around and I was like, what? Like the world does not need a terrible camera attachment for the black and white Game Boy, and then you can print stickers and whatnot. Like I like why no, like even I can tell this is a bad idea, and and I was talking to some of my game designer friends, and like, look, like not every idea is going to be good. Like, like even someone who basically has some of the most richly rewarded and profitable game series of all times can still go basically really not really not do a great job of creating creating something that people want. But but still, if you're gonna throw money at someone, if it's either me or Shigeru Miyamoto, give it to Miyamoto-san. He he has a much better track record than I do.
Hey,
Even if he created a camera and sticker printer for the Game Boy.
that Game Boy printer was amazing. I'm sorry. I still have mine. It's sitting on my desk over there.
Look, we all know your lack of taste, so let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, imagine 7-year-old me's taste.
Oh my god.
I had the Game Boy Color. I had the Game Boy Color carrier that could carry 20 games with it. I had the printer. I had the carrying case for the printer. I had 3 rolls of paper.
Oh my.
Wait, was that sticker paper? Oh shit, I didn't know those were stickers.
It might be. I just obviously this is years and years ago that I went to this talk. But yeah, but anyway, my point being that it can be really hard to judge your own work and understand what's quality and whatnot. And so sometimes you just kind of have to get in there and make shit.
Yeah, now, just on the topic of Shigeru Miyamoto and his brilliance.
Right.
Who at Nintendo, when he walks into your office and goes, I got this great idea for a camera, Who at the
Right,
time
right.
is going to sit there and go, no, that's a bad idea? To Shigeru
I mean,
Miyamoto.
like, the thing is, here's the thing though, like but that's a really important thing for creative work though. Like, we talk about a bit about this when it comes to things like writing. Like, like writers need editors. Like Stephen King. Like, there's been like several examples of this. Stephen King is a notable example of this, where like you get an author that becomes like super popular. Gets basically like a lot of recognition, and then like editors get scared to edit them because like editors are basically editors are the people that kind of like make their bullshit make sense, right? And so like but like eventually they get like, well, he knows what he's doing. I like but like I'm going to that cruise ship. But like Stephen King was like basically like was has been on record as saying, no, I need editors. My my shit stinks until it's edited. He's like, I'm too wordy. He's a lot of times he's like, I'm focusing on something else besides the details that I need an editor to basically help me with.
Right, that's not
he's
my
like,
job, that's your job.
Right, exactly. And so like when he he's like when he got like so big that editors were afraid to kind of like when he got when editors were afraid to edit him. Right. He was like, no, I need that. And like I think like that's an important thing too for
with George Lucas too.
I mean, yeah, like a lot of creative people, like like kind of like the creative, like problem is sometimes they start to believe their own bullshit. Like, they start to believe it. Like, no, I'm this infallible master of creativity. Like, no, like, and like like I there was one game. What was it? Crap, I'm totally blanking on the name. It was an MMO created by Richard Garriott when he left Origin. He created he basically worked with NCSoft. And he created I need to look this up. Okay, I'm gonna die, but
you want me to look it up while you talk?
Yeah, go for it. And like it was a horrendous failure. Oh my god, it was terrible. It was infamous for how bad it was because like it was this MMO that basically had a lot of this promise. Look at like Destination Games was the company that he formed to create it. And it's supposed to be like this great game because it was it's basically supposed to be this game where like he it's supposed to be like like they had this like dream team of people who who had like a lot of experience with the MMOs, and they were all come together. Like they had Jake Song, who created the original Lineage.
Tabula Rasa.
Tabula Rasa. There you go. Yeah, blank slate. Like, and so like so it's supposed to be kind of this like this. It's supposed to be this wonder game because it had like it had like you said, Richard Garriott from Ultima Online fame. It had Jake Song from Lineage. It had a bunch of people that worked on Ultima Online from Origin that had worked with Richard Garriott before, and like, but it was a tremendous flop. And like one of the big reasons for this was that like everybody was so high powered and so well known and so established that and they basically said this in a GDC panel. Like the problem was that nobody was nobody had the guts to say, look, this is a fucking terrible idea. nobody wanted to go to Richard Garriott, who basically created the Ultimate series, and go like no, your idea stink. Nobody wanted to go to Jake Song, who created Lineage, which was like like one of the biggest MMOs for like for years and years and years in in Korea, and say no, sorry, your MMO idea stinks. And like and they said that like it was particularly bad because like they had so many people so many people kind of working together it just became like really hard for them to kind of like like the essentially kind of part of it is also too many cooks. Like they had too many
Mhm.
high-powered people,
Right,
and
right.
everybody was just so like it was so overly polite to each other
I
that there was just no way for them to kind of like actually like separate out the good ideas from the bad.
What year was that? 2007. I remember hearing about Tabula Rasa when I was in high school.
It was actually I actually played it for a bit. I actually liked it. Like I really liked it. I mean, like it wasn't a great game, but like like it was one of the first games that kind of tried to have a bit of an actiony type of flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it was basically it's supposed to be kind of like a run and gun type game, but it was a little clunky. The combat system was definitely not tap target and hammer rotation type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I think I was
Um,
playing WoW at the time when I was hearing about that. I'm like, I'm not playing another game.
right.
WoW for life.
I was actually it was a pretty fun game. Like but I remember like Richard Gere was very excited about it, like before when it was still in development. Like he gave a talk talking about because he was like a bit of a language nerd. Like in the original single player Ultima RPGs, they included this alphabet. It was a substitution cipher
Mm-hmm.
with the Futhark runes, and he and so he talked about like wanting to do like step up his game and then go from this simple substitution cipher to
Like an independent
creating something.
language.
Right. And so what he basically he took a lot of inspiration from looking at pictorial languages like Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And so he created this language essentially that was pictorial in nature, and as a language geek, as someone who basically studied language and computer science, computer languages, no, I loved it. It was really interesting. But again, a game is more than a bunch of little good ideas. It you really need to have a central you kind of have to have like a central kind of vision to kind of hold it together usually. And so that's I think that's kind of what fell apart was a lot of people had potentially good individual ideas, but they also had a bunch of bad ideas that getting weeded out, and then there was nobody with the authority saying no, we do this, we don't do this.
Oh my god, this guy in the gunner seat's pissing me the hell off.
Uh-oh.
He keeps shooting my tethers before they latch onto anything. Which the tether damage is based off of how many things are attached to it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think there is a movie equivalent to that game, to that scenario. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
Where you have too many producers and kind of nobody.
Too many, A-list producers or yeah, stuff like that. I guess I mean, I guess you could argue the recent Star Wars movies might have that kind of situation where you have just
Right, where they got
no hierarchical authority taking care of things, and
yeah,
it's all by committee.
despite Lucas's multitude of sins, one thing he did provide for the Star Wars universe was a central authority for the vision of the universe.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Whereas when he left and
mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
no, so when he left, it was kind of hard, there was no central authority like that, and he even lamented Disney didn't want him consulting, and Lucas does, Lucas, like I said, Lucas has a lot of sins, but I think that one of the things he really did do well was the idea of a coherent world, and having and having a lot of veracity to the world too.
Right, and he'd listen to his peers when they'd say no, George, stop.
Right. Yeah, he kind of like charged forward on some bad ideas, but then I think he, you know, right. And like I think that's like the hallmark of a professional. Is like like the two hallmarks of a professional is one, doing shit when you don't feel like it. Like that's like whenever I have a friend who's like, oh, I want to do creative stuff, but I'm just not in the mood for it. I'm like, well, if you want to do this professionally, you know what? Some days you're gonna wake up and not really feel like doing shit. You know why? Because like this is still work. This is like it doesn't this doesn't magically become not work because like it's it's fun. Like no, like this is still work. So you better get used to the idea of like getting stuff done when you don't feel like it. But the other thing too is like it's basically welcoming feedback, and like like there's an art to giving feedback as well as an art to receiving feedback. Like a lot of people kind of are really terrible about giving feedback. Like like this is one of the big problems you run into like with talking about MMOs in particular is that like people basically often kind of give very selfish perspectives on what they like and what they don't like, and so you kind of have to like balance that knowledge out that people are going to be selfish and not necessarily going to have the game's best interest at heart. But I think on the flip side, like like you want the I think on the flip side too is that like there's some people that will shut it out. And going back to the asset store, I think like that's like one of the downsides, like I said, of using asset stores, like people might criticize, oh, well, you just use the same thing as this other game over here. It's like, well, like, but that's not the point. The point is, like the point was like look at the gameplay or look at the, look at some aspect of it, look at the original creative aspect of it, rather than like like criticizing it for what's really a kind of a minor complaint.
Yeah, like I swear that there was some old back during like the MMO boom. There were some old MMOs I played that used pre-made assets because
I mean, one of the big things I remember, I don't even remember what it was called, but like there's one MMO that like like it got into beta and like it was like they just wholesale ripped off the World of Warcraft UI, like to the point where like they ripped off the little key icon that gave you a key ring, even though there's no keys in the game in that game.
Well, WoW has it, so
right, exactly. That's the silliness of it is that like they kind of like went, oh well, like World of Warcraft did it, so we should do it too. And it's like no. Well, but I think it was like even more blatant than that. I think they just kind of like they basically just kind of copied, pasted, and recolored the they just the assets, the UI.
Right. No, that sounds familiar. I think I might have played that game.
Right.
I think I played a cleric in it or something like that. That sounds really familiar.
I mean, yeah.
No, the game I was thinking of was Runes of Magic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the one I was thinking of.
It's one of the early free-to-play games, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was like one of the early entries in the free-to-play boom.
Right.
I mean, I played it for a little while, and it wasn't horrible, but like I went into my first dungeon with the guild that I was playing with at the time. Of course, I forget how old I was at the time. I forget what year it was, to be honest. But I was like very shy and nervous. I'm like, oh, I don't know about going to the first dungeon. I'm nervous. I'm scared,
Right.
And So like I went in with like people that I was somewhat slightly familiar with, and it
Mm.
like that dungeon was awful. It was
Oh
like
yeah.
the hallways were the same texture wrapped around.
Oof.
Like it was just a wrapped texture constantly. It was ugly as all
Right.
heck, with no like
Right.
break in the repetition or anything.
Mm.
Honestly, it kind of reminded me of the screenshots I've seen from like Meridian 59 a little bit.
Right.
And I'm not trying to bash on Meridian.
Well, I mean, Meridian was a much older game, so like,
but that's what it
Meridian
looked like.
launched. Yeah. Right. Right. Meridian launched in the like the
90s.
late '90s. Like
Yeah,
right. Right. Yeah, like I think if I remember correctly, Runes of Magic came about a decade later. So
yeah, and I remember going to that dungeon and being like, oh, is that the quality that we're playing with? Oh, maybe this game isn't for me.
right.
Because like graphics aren't everything to me. I just want to be clear.
Right.
But
There's a certain minimum quality you kind of have to.
Right.
Well, I think that important thing. I think that's an important thing to understand. That's kind of one of the reasons why, asset store assets can work, because again, going back to what we were talking about before, it takes a while to make some of these assets. And so, you can either kind of like potentially share assets with a lot of other games, or you can spend a whole lot of time making your own assets, and you're probably not having as good a quality. Like basically having that where it's like, oh well, this just looks like like repeating textures that aren't very well differentiated, and there's no breakup and whatnot. Like stuff that a newbie artist might think is okay, but like a more experienced artist like, no, I'll show you. You need to do the
You gotta do the gradients, man.
Right.
Like, could you imagine if like Final Fantasy 14 tried to pull something like that in one of its dungeons? Like, how much outcry there would be.
Right.
For anyone that doesn't know, Final Fantasy 14 has very detailed and aesthetically pretty dungeons.
Right. No, and usually there's like some kind of like really deep theme to it, where there might be a arboretum that has a lot of plants in it, or a dungeon that's ruined from a specific civilization, so there's a lot of like little details in it.
Dunmore.
Yeah.
Dunmore is the Pixie Palace in or something like that.
Yeah, it's basically it's like the area where the underwater trickster spirits live.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
And it is a beautiful, and it has a really neat trick where it switches from night to day, or no, it changes aesthetics halfway through depending on which boss you've killed.
Right.
So it'll start off with lily pads and weeping willows, and then you kill the first boss, and all the weeping willows like light up, and everything comes alive with the lights and magic, and it's just a beautiful effect.
Right. No, they like, and like so you get a lot of kind of attention to detail, but again, like like Final Fantasy has some very experienced and some very they have a relatively small team, but they still have a very kind of talented team with a lot of experience. So
Oh. No, I saw a pumpkin. And no, he doesn't need to go to dry dock. He can just leave. Hi, Yeager.
Yeah,
How are you doing? Yeager Moo is in the chat. And Yeager's from our Warframe clan.
Oh.
We have friendly faces here.
Well, that's good for a change. So I have to put up with you all the time.
I mean, you kind of like it though. You keep coming back, and
I mean I got nothing better to do.
Oh, and Yeager plays 14. I'm
cool.
assuming from the Marlboro FC. Gotta kill more things. Gotta kill fast. God, I love this tether. It makes stuff melt so fast. Void Moo has another Moo. Fight to the death.
Oh no.
There
can only be one.
Oh, I got you, Yeager. It's all good. I was making it something, and I made a mass out of myself. A mass? A Moo ass?
I mean, I don't know. Are you getting kind of fatty?
I mean, yeah.
So you're making a mass out of yourself too? I'm not even ashamed.
Did you just try to equate weight with mass? I believe you're making a very valuable variable there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is your, gravitational constant fluctuating? No. Then the joke still works. We got real fucking nerdy there.
What if it's buoyancy and not gravity?
That's just NASA math. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh my! I'm in tears right now.
But I think and like I said, I think there's a I think I think I also trying to get back on topic, talking about Astra. I think also there's I think there's a bit of an art to using store assets properly. Well,
there's a way to do it well.
Right. Like slapping it in and just calling it a day, probably not such a good idea. I think there's certain things that even professionals don't want to deal with. For example, one of the big programs that a lot of companies use was a thing called Speed Tree, where they would basically it'd create trees that were basically optimized for rendering.
Oh, you talked about that before.
Right.
You were talking about licensing issues with that.
Right. And so basically you license it for a game and whatnot. But it gave some kind of it gave some freedom in how the trees were kind of done and developed and whatnot. But it was the point the point was that most game artists really didn't care about making the billionth fucking tree in a game. They just wanted to they wanted to get it done quickly. And hey, if it improved the quality of the performance of the game, well then hey, all the better.
Oh,
there's no reason.
That too. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. So yeah, I think that the base there's there's kind of a bit of an art to basically using the assets well, because you don't always need to basically do every single asset by hand in your game.
Mm-hmm. So Yeager, we are discussing the difference in making assets yourself for your game versus using an asset store like the Unity store. So we're speaking in more general terms. We're not speaking on a particular game in itself.
Right.
Which is a good rule of thumb with our discussions. We don't tend to get too much into specifics unless we're talking about a very specific topic.
Right. I mean, we might mention, games or whatnot that have done certain things, but...
And you talking about trees, all I can think of, I wonder if Nintendo licensed out the Great Deku Tree from somewhere. Nobody wants to make that nonsense.
But yeah, and so, again, being able to kind of use these things, and so, like, a lot of times, like, and trees are generally not the focus of a game. Like these, like a lot of games that used it where, just basically wanted to use trees as a background.
What about Wind Waker? It has an entire dungeon based off of a tree.
I mean, that was probably hand created then.
It was gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was thinking you were talking about using asset stores well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about there's some, the hell name is that?
I have no idea.
I was thinking about RPG Maker games.
Mm-hmm.
And like the whole point of RPG Maker is that it comes with assets.
Right.
And I haven't played a lot of games using RPG Maker, but I've seen videos of games where they use, basically the same assets as every other game using that software, but they look gorgeous.
Right.
Because they made sure to use the assets in clever ways.
Right.
I was thinking about there's like Markiplier fan games that I've seen. It's just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But like they look like good games,
Right.
Pumpkin says he was in the group before. He wasn't on my list before, so. Dejar says, as always, design taste I'm assuming is important.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things that, if you have kind of a good design sensibility, especially with visual design and whatnot. I mean, I guess like a good example of this would be like, housing in MMO. Like, look at housing in like Final Fantasy 14. Like, you get the same assets as everyone else. Some people are a little bit better at like, this, glitching.
A little bit.
But by and large, like everybody gets the same assets, everybody gets the same structures, everybody gets the same, right. Like, but if you can tell someone who basically is really good at at housing decoration, sometimes sometimes it's like they're so good, like you're like, how the fuck did they even do that?
Right. No, there's some people that I know of off the top of my head that if you ask them to build something, they'll build it. Like, they'll be like, okay, give me 6 hours.
Right.
And you just kind of sit there and go, how did that, okay.
Right. I mean, and like I think it's like like we can kind of like talk about this in terms of like creative work, like we can for like most other um we can talk about like this like basically like a lot of the other creative stuff, like knowing your tools and understanding and have a good sense of design and whatnot. Like these things are important, in this context as well, because like you don't.
Ooh, there's a Vidar reactor.
Ooh.
Best reactor in the game. I don't have a lemonade yet. I thought I had a lemonade down here. Oh. Sorry. Trying to fix myself another drink real fast. Oh, I don't have any water. Be right back.
Alright. But yeah, but like I was saying, like even something like Final Fantasy 14 housing. I mean, you can kind of think of that like creating stuff with an asset store. There's some people you're like, okay, yeah, they put the bed over there and they put this over there and they got the new sink or the new bathtub. Okay, that's great, but that looks like everybody else's. And then you have people that kind of like put things together in such a way. They have a good eye for either using space, or they have a good eye for theme, or like like a lot of other things that kind of like make a difference. A lot of the things that make a difference, even though they're kind of using the same thing, everybody, it's the same assets as everybody else.
I return.
Welcome back.
HG14. Oh god, another Home and Garden Channel 5. Anyways, sorry, I was about to go on a completely random tangent there. Let's not. But no, like 14 housing, that is a good example of like asset store.
Right. Because that's exactly right.
I'm winded from going up and down the stairs. Shit, man.
Going back to mass.
Ugh.
You and your fat mass.
Oh my goodness. Wiggle that mass. Wiggle.
No. Okay. You took my joke and you took it too far.
What do you expect me to do with it?
I don't know. I mean, I like really like. I have no room to complain. I should have expected it.
You know who you're talking to.
I do. I accept some of the blame for this. Still mostly your fault, but I'll accept some of the blame.
I never said it wasn't. I just said temper your expectations.
Right. But yeah, and so I mean, I guess like if you really kind of wanted to get fancy with Final Fantasy 14 housing, I'm sure there's mods for housing items. So like people could get mods for housing items, and then basically like create screenshots, basically kind of show it off. That's basically people like potentially doing more custom stuff, or basically going to more exclusive asset stores. Potentially how you want to look at it.
Ooh, maybe even illicit asset stores.
Right. I guess it depends on where they got their assets from, huh?
From the mama and the daddy.
Oh.
I needed to get off Twitter.
I mean, yeah. You need to do a lot of things, to be fair.
I mean, sure. But yeah, I was thinking about like fan games and game mods.
Oh yeah, fan game. Right. I think I started talking a little bit about that. Like, you know, like that's where you kind of get like, you know, like it's like fan fiction. Like, you know, like people who can write but don't, like, you know, like the blank slate is like the scariest thing for them.
Right.
Like, you know, like, yeah, it can be really hard.
Sorry. I was just gonna say I just saw there's a relatively new Ocarina of Time mod. I forget what it is off the top of my head, to be honest, but I just saw it popped up in my feeds. Some speedrunner that I follow was playing it. I'm like, oh, I don't know that mod. Oh, I think it's Mario in Ocarina of Time. Or it's Link. No, it's Link in Mario 64. I'm sorry. That's
okay.
The Mario in Ocarina of Time. That's an older one. I've known about that one. But Link in Mario is new to me. And like, but the thing is that they'll take the game worlds and then they'll modify them for the gameplay of the character.
Right.
And it's like Mario in Ocarina of Time is actually like really fucking creative, because basically what they ended up having to do was scale down Mario to like 1/3 of like Link's size, and then turn the whole world into like jumping puzzles and parkour puzzles. And it's like was that 3DO that made Army Men the game?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
kind of reminiscent of Army Men, where like you're trying to battle in the bathroom and everything's so big.
Right.
But it's actually really impressive to look at, and I've wanted to play it, but I just haven't gotten around to getting the file. Well, I'd probably go for the Link and Mario, because I'm really bad at Mario games.
3D Mario is really hard too.
It is. Like, I have Mario Odyssey and I technically beat it, but I haven't like collected all the moons and done the hard mode, and mostly because I'm just bad at it.
Right.
Pumpkin, yes, that.
Mm.
And maybe that's something else we could talk about, is like the attempts of recapturing Nintendo hard games. Because like Nintendo's trying to do that. Because
right,
I think we can all agree that Nintendo has a bit of a reputation of making easier games or more accessible games.
Well, like I was kind of thinking about that as like, well, I was thinking about that as a general topic. Like like the game industry kind of goes through like fashions, and sometimes like it's kind of very small scale stuff. But like, you know, like I just reminded myself, like, you know, for a while, like people, like, you know, had this like fascination with what they called one-button games, where
Mhm.
there's like literally you just push one button in order to try to play a game,
Oh, like
and like
finger, death, touch, whatever it was.
I don't. Yeah, it might have been, but yeah,
Touch,
like,
death,
but so
whatever. Yeah.
the idea was basically like you would you got you had games that basically were all about timing or all about
There's precision and.
right like and the idea being like that these types of games were more approachable because like it didn't have like the idea was that the traditional kind of controller was intimidating to people. Like somebody would look at a controller and like and having to coordinate pushing a bunch of buttons and triggers and joy pads and
Mhm.
analog sticks, and coordinating that was big, very difficult. So obviously the superior way to handle it was basically tell you like you basically like reduce the number of buttons down, and what's if you get it down to 0, then hey, you've achieved perfection. And so and so basically like there was this big push towards like doing this sort of thing, like making this sort of these sorts of games. But like that fell out of fashion really quickly because it generally turned out that like for a lot of people like that's not that complex of a thing. Like it's not that complex to be able to do.
Oh yeah, it's like runners. The runners type games.
Oh, yeah, the endless runner,
Yeah,
runner
yeah.
games, yeah. Where they have very simplified controls for mostly because it's on mobile platform, and so it's like tap and swipe and nudge and they don't a lot of it's about simplifying down the controls. But like there was like for a while there was this design philosophy that you wanted to basically like get everything down to like just pushing one button. Like somebody I knew that made like a civilization type game where there was one of these one button games, and so the idea was that uh you swapped between I think it was essentially as aggressive or offensive stance for the for your civilization, and so like that influenced like some stats, and going like to have you had to kind of like flip between them based on like if somebody was attacking you, or if you weren't being attacked, and going aggressive wasn't going to be very good for you.
Mm-hmm.
um And so but like like I said, but there's a lot of like a lot of kind of fashions like that, like and like the accessibility is another one of those things, like like that was supposed to be the whole thing about the Wii U, was that the Wiimote was supposed to be a more quote intuitive controller,
Right.
like being able to wave and point something. It was supposed to make more sense than like a control pad and buttons.
Right.
And
Oh,
so
somebody on Twitter I was talking to, said that they dreamt that they were playing like Final Fantasy 14 on the Wii or something.
okay,
And all I could say was, so how was the Waggle Tech?
right. I mean, like like a lot of like I mean to be fair, like like the sometimes a lot of these things kind of work, but like I like it's kind of a question of like like how much of this was how much of the like how much of it kind of sticks around. Like I think the Wiimote was a really like brilliantly creative thing. The big problem you run into though is like a lot of game developers didn't know how to use it.
Yeah, yeah. Like the thing that I was the most impressed about with the Wiimote's design, it had nothing to do with the Waggle Tech. Big shock. But it was when you turned it sideways, it turned into a normal, like an NES controller.
NES style controller,
And I was just like, when that never dawned on me when I was first using the Wii, it wasn't until I played a game that I was like, turn the controller sideways. I went,
Right.
it's an
Dun dun
NES controller.
dun. Right.
And I just thought that was like a really clever design, and it was so intentional.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I could go on the Wii store, buy an NES game, and use the Wiimote as an NES controller, and it worked perfectly.
Right, exactly. Like, you know, like I'm pretty sure that was probably the motivation behind that. It was like, oh, we can sell all the old games to them to people.
Right. And they can use the controller that came with it.
Right. Rather than like, you know, oh, sorry. In order to pay us money, you have to go out and pay us, you know, additional money for a peripheral.
Well, I mean,
it's
the,
like,
the
no,
controller was better, but
right. Well, I mean, yeah, but
because the thing is that if you got an N64 game, you had to get a Pro controller.
Right.
Because the Wiimote didn't have all the button inputs for like.
Right. Well, like you said, it was the NES. It was the NES style controller, not not a SNES or N64 style controller. So.
Because I did buy Ocarina of Time on my Wii. Well, and Majora's Mask. Like, actually, I don't even have Majora's Mask for my 3DS. I should fix that. I never played that remaster.
But yeah, and so, you know, so but you get and so like and so you kind of have like, you know, the Nintendo Heart accessibility / Nintendo Heart is kind of like another set of kind of like weird fashion trends in game design where it gets, oh no, we need to make it as accessible as possible, even to the point of like, developing hardware to be accessible, or like, the concept of like, oh, we need to be we need to kind of go more hardcore because that's the audience that actually pays us to play these games.
right. And well, I was thinking about Breath of the Wild, where they try to go both with it, where you could buy the DLC to unlock Hero Mode, which is the hard mode. And they've been doing Hero Mode since Skyward Sword. Well, Master Quest, but
right.
But like, it doesn't always work out because like Hero Mode on Breath of the Wild is ass. And the game was not designed to be played that way.
Right.
Because for like example, the mobs have natural health regeneration. On the game that rewards you for being patient in fighting and like being calculated in your attacks and not just going ham.
Right.
These two things are contradictory to each other.
Right.
So it's like trying to throw in a Nintendo hard experience in a game that really wasn't meant to have that.
Right. It really wasn't designed to have that type of experience.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm just playing it wrong. I don't fucking know, but I'm not doing it again. Did I just see a ram sled? No? Okay. I thought I saw a ram sled flying around me and I couldn't find it. I guess I was mistaken.
Well, they're probably on board already now.
No! I checked. But yeah, so, trying to go back to asset stores, I saw an advertisement for hair assets that were on sale. And, like, they were, like, really high-quality 3D hair assets. And it made me think about how hard it is to do hair in 3D games.
Right, right. Like, yeah, I mean, like we've kind of like perpetually lamented about the dodgy quality of some of the Final Fantasy hairstyles.
Right, right. And I mean, like, you look at the hair in Warframe on the operators is
Right,
like really hit or miss.
right, right.
But then you look at the hair in like Final Fantasy 15, where like the hair has its own graphic settings
Right.
in the options menu. And but um I think we talked about it a little bit, like how hard it is to actually design hair in games.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, basically it's a physics object, and like hair physics is weird. Like it doesn't.
There's nothing to emulate it off of.
Right,
It's
right.
such of a unique thing.
Right. Like I mean, basically it's kind of the same thing. Like with cloth simulation at the beginning, like it was a very expensive, very difficult thing to do. And so, like, like I think like a lot of times, like, especially long hair, like people just kind of use, the same thing for cloth simulation. It didn't look right, like, like because hair is not cloth. And the big problem you run into with hair is that basically is like, you have a bunch of
Fibers,
individual, the individual strands,
yeah.
yeah, right, and so they don't quite work the same.
Because what a lot of people will do is they'll make a plane of texture and overlay the hair on top of that, and then they'll animate that entire plane as one unit. And it just it doesn't look right.
Oh, I think I'm stuck.
You need to go to dry dock?
Yeah, when we head to dry dock, I'm stuck on a black screen. I can see my icons for my tribute for for Titania, but that's the only thing I can see.
Okay, we're going back to dry dock. Let's hear. Kiersey says Tomb Raider still did amazing. Pumpkin says that what Corso said. DeJoe says tough to shortcut computationally all those collisions.
Right.
And I'm not saying that it. No, I am saying it's very hard to do, and I'm also saying a lot of people do it very poorly because it's so hard. Oof. I got 43 out of 30 wreckage capacity.
Yeah.
That was a long stretch of railjack. Oh, I can get a rank 10.
Oh, nice.
Should it be gunning or should it be piloting?
Probably piloting, huh?
Yeah, because I am always piloting. Now I can ram things and they'll die.
Ooh.
DeJoe says it's easier to pretend they have the strongest hairspray in the world.
don't. I think it screwed me out of all my stuff that we just did.
Really?
Let me try logging out, logging back in.
You didn't get like
Yeah, because
your 600 intrinsics?
No, I did not. Because I maxed out my Arcwing weapon. I was gonna swap that out, but it's like, nope, it's not. Oh, okay, now it's maxed out.
Oh, you just had a relog real fast?
Oh yeah, I left the dojo and I went to my lander. I was using a older version of the.
Okay, I'm installing a new side gun. It's a Carcinonox. Okay, I gotta do some scrapping here.
Yeah, I was a little confused because I didn't have it. I was still at 13 items, which I had before we went in. What? Yeah, I didn't have any. I only had like 100 intrinsics. I'm like, no, we just like gained like a fucking billion intrinsics. Like, no.
Yeah. You got all your stuff now, though?
I think so. I'm gonna head back to the dojo. Yeah, my wreckage capacity is the 31 out of 30 now. So.
Okay. How did I get more wreckage? Well, I guess I didn't clear out my wreckage before we left and you did. I guess, like, missiles don't spawn. Like, you can only get the crafted missile launchers.
Don't know.
Okay, my shields are fully upgraded now.
Nice.
Shit. Other than my side guns, my ship is fully upgraded.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Nice.
And side guns, I get more pissed off when people are using them than not. Yeah, it says my Helios is still rank 0.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even though the mission said it maxed out.
Right, right.
Let me get in the arsenal real fast. Because I'm trying to form up my Helios. so that it's not a piece of shit. That's max rank. It's just being a silly goose.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's okay. Do you want to run some more?
I guess. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to think of anything else on the topic. Can you think of anything else on the topic?
I mean, just you personally. I mean, do you notice like how much when like when a game uses like with store assets?
Honestly, I don't know the difference on a personal
Right.
level. Like, I can guess when a game's using like pre-made assets because they won't necessarily blend in with other objects necessarily or other textures. I know Starforge. Listen. I know. If there's any game that I ever knew used store assets, it's fucking Starforge. However, have you ever heard of what was it called? This soda game?
Soda Dungeon or something like that?
I can find. I think I own it. I don't remember. Let me find it real fast. It's like Soda. No, I'm not thinking of Soda Dungeon. It was Soda Drinker Pro.
Okay.
It's a very weird and trippy game. Let's call it a game.
Mm.
Here, I'll send you a link to the store page and you can take a quick look at it.
Sure.
It's very weird. Cause it's like it starts you off in like a first person shooter where you're just walking around drinking a soda, and if you go to the right place on the map, you go into LSD land. Let's call it that. And it's weird. But like it goes into like these very kind of like quote unquote artsy sections that I imagine could be pre-rendered assets just being reutilized.
Right.
It's weird. No, I don't think I've played that many games that have relied heavily on store assets, to be honest.
Mm.
I imagine like people could probably upload store assets into like Gmod maps.
Mm.
Like I said, there's RPG makers that I've seen and I've played.
Right.
But those are kind of expected from those games.
Right.
I would say like trying to compare like an RPG maker game to like Golden Sun would be cruel.
Right, you're kind of limited in what what the game provides you and whatnot. So
Yeah. You still looking at that, or are you ready to go?
you can invite me. I'm ready to go. Oh my god.
I already invited you.
I see what you mean though.
Yeah, it's weird.
Oh, did you? Oh, well.
It's a very weird game, and it's actually like a horror game. I don't like. Have you ever experienced something that is so desperate to be original that it's actually terrifying?
Right.
That's what that kind of reminds me of. It's like, oh, we got to do something original. It doesn't have to be good.
I disconnected. Let's see if I can disconnect before other people join in.
Oh, well, toss you an invite. There you go.
There you go.
But like, it's a very well reviewed game too, so maybe I haven't reached the third layer of it or something.
Oh, right. It's fourth dimensional chess. You just don't get it.
Right. I haven't gone far enough down the rabbit hole yet to get to the good part. Oh, they really did nerf these guys.
Which guys?
The hostile mobs.
Oh.
They like have their health during an update.
Ah.
I haven't really done Railjack since then. Actually, I would imagine that there's probably some store assets in like Half-Life. And like those kind of older shooter games. I don't know. Did those stores exist at that time?
No, but it might have been like they might have reused some assets between games and whatnot.
True. Oh, I did hit it. Okay. I'm sure there's some like Wii games that I played that use pre-made assets too.
Right.
Almost certain. But Boomblocks would never do that. I want to play Boombox again. I miss it.
It is a fun game. It is one of those games I think that really used the Wiimote to a good effect.
Yeah, and it was kind of lenient with the waggle tech.
Right. I remember really hurting my elbow playing that game though.
It's on the wrist. I don't know why you're using your elbow.
Yeah, you get that good fucking fling to it.
Nah, the game that I hurt myself playing was the Zelda games.
Yeah.
Yes, Twilight Princess only wasn't as bad, but Skyward Sword, oh my goodness. That would tire you out pretty dang good.
Right.
I guess that's something we could talk about in the future too. Getting gamers to exercise.
See also DDR, Dance Dance Revolution in schools.
Well, like there's some games that have been trying to get players to move more.
Right.
That's something Nintendo's been kind of working on, using the Wii for a while, and there's some like Switch games that use the motion sensors like that.
Right.
But I was thinking about VR. There's the VR systems that use like the omnidirectional treadmills and stuff to simulate movement while you're hooked into the VR system. Jaeger says, I think Ring Fit does a good job the most at it. I don't... Is that what I'm talking about too? Wait, what's Ring Fit? I don't... You guys are like making up words. What the fuck? What is this? Do you know what they're talking about? I had to look this up.
No, I have no idea what it is.
Okay, I feel glad I feel better I'm not the only one. Oh, it's like Wii Fitness on steroids.
Oh.
You get this ring that you hook the Joy-Cons into for the Switch, and you go on an adventure.
Okay.
And you start to notice all the dirt that's hanging around in your apartment.
As you do.
No, you know a game that really worked your arm? Fucking Wii Sports.
Yeah.
Like that bowling game, oh my goodness. Fuck tennis though, that was...
Now with real actual tennis elbow.
So, what's the best game that you've played that had like store assets in it?
I think it's probably like, you know, basically kind of like what you said. Like there's been a couple of like RPG Maker type games. They've done interesting things. And I don't know, like, you know, like I don't know which assets are reused and which assets, like, you know, they you know, created that on their own or whatnot.
I mean, to be fair, if you can't tell,
right,
then you
I mean,
did
like
something right.
Well, I mean, you know, like, but I mean, it may have been like, you know, you have like, you know, half a dozen bog standard enemies or something like that that are basically, bog standard enemies that basically are, you know, like, you know, default assets that, you know, it doesn't really matter if you use it or not. Yeah, if you use them or not, because like, it's not the focus. Like, you know, you know, the stuff that's basically, you know, the stuff that's more common, you customize, but you can't use some asset store assets for, or some of the default assets for, stuff that isn't super common. Yeah, I mean, like, you might not be able to tell. You might not, it doesn't really matter.
Or if you use some fucking trees off the Unity store.
Right. Right. Or some texture off the Unity store or whatever. Like, you create something that is, not. It doesn't just look like, oh, it's the same thing used over and over again.
Like Runes of Magic.
Mm.
And this resource buff is very nice.
Yeah. Getting a whole lot of these resources, so.
I mean, I was able to fully upgrade my shields. I was able to fusion balance it like 4 times.
Nice.
Which I usually can't afford to do.
What's it take to do the fusion balance?
Well, it depends on the rank, but rank 3s require Asterite, and then and then whatever resources, it uses basically all the tier 3 resources.
Right.
But no, apparently the Unity store has a bunch of sales happening at the moment. I saw a advert for that recently. I'm like, that's interesting. I never thought of the Unity store having sales.
I mean, it's probably, the sales are kind of like, it's the same philosophy as a lot of other stuff. You're trying to encourage people to do, to buy stuff that they might not otherwise buy.
Right.
I mean, maybe, like you said, like, the asset stores have been kind of like a really good thing in general for developers. But like, if you kind of really look at the business model for the asset store, though, like, it is a little predatory. Because you're kind of preying on people like, oh, I want to build a game, but I'm not an artist, so I'm gonna buy these assets, even though I maybe have no idea how to build a game. And to be fair, like, Unity does take, some pains to basically kind of like help, like they have free tutorials and whatnot for people to kind of teach them how to make a game. So, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say like they're completely predatory, but like, like a lot of times game development, like indie game development, is kind of like, predicated on hopes and dreams, and sometimes more hopes, more dreams than. Right. Like sometimes more hopes and dreams than actual reality. Like, no, you can totally make a game, and then like you'll be the next,
insert developer here.
Right. Insert famous indie developer here. I can't really think of any good people that I
I don't know. Yeah.
Like you'll be the next id, even though like like their whole shtick was making their own. Making their own, code-based license out to other people more than making games. But yeah, like, and so like, like asset store purchases, like a lot of times it's going to be like, oh, I'll totally make this, I'll buy this asset store thing. I get like, like even just on a practical level too, something I've mentioned before when we talked about Kickstarter games, is that like a lot of games don't get, a lot of games that get planned don't get launched, and like you don't hear about them because it's all internal. Like, So like there's going to be a lot of people that have kind of like, I have this great idea for a game. I'm gonna start working on it. I'm gonna buy asset store assets. Oh look, this isn't working out the way I wanted it to, and so I'm just gonna kind of like uh, I'm just gonna kind of like set it by the wayside. I mean, but like you still poured however much money in asset store assets, even though your game's not gonna work the way you expect.
I haven't looked into it. I'm curious what the pricing looks like for that.
I think it depends. Like the prices range. Like you can get some very simple assets for a couple bucks, but ranging up to a large set of complex assets that get spend a lot of can extend a lot of money. I think the other problem though is that the other issue with asset store offerings as well is that like one of the biggest issues you run into like with a lot of indie games is based like consistency in art, like if you're just buying like random assets, like this armor and this sword and this shield and this horse may not all be like have a consistent feel to them.
Or you could be playing a Bethesda game. I'm sorry, was that a cheap shot? I'm sorry.
I mean, it was, but it was still accurate. But so.
I'm sorry, this horse doesn't have enough genitals for my taste.
It always comes down to that, doesn't it?
It does, in fact. I'm sorry, I haven't spent enough money on horse armor.
I remember like when what game was it? The horse armor. I think
Oblivion.
It was Oblivion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like people get all up in arms of that, and now I just like laugh.
I know it's Oblivion because I just bought that DLC. I just bought Game of the Year edition, so I had that DLC.
Right. But yeah, so but like I was saying, that is like if you just buying random assets, it usually doesn't work out that well, because like you're not gonna get a consistent look and feel for your game, which I think like it can be more distracting than having poor assets for your game, like assets that don't look as nice, basically. Yeah, having an inconsistent look and feel to your game.
Big Mikey Ocho's asking asking for clarification. Wasn't that one of the first paid DLCs? Horse armor?
Yeah, the horse armor. Yeah, the horse armor for Oblivion. Yeah, and people thought it was silly. I mean, like to be fair, like Oblivion is primarily a single player game, so like this was, like. I think like like a lot of the stuff we've seen since then, has come we've seen because of it's basically multiplayer. Like it's one thing to kind of buy $5 armor for your horse when it's basically just you enjoying it. It's different if you buy $5 armor for your horse when it's you basically have got you're going to be able to show it off to your friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be some of the reasons why people kind of gotten more acceptance of it, because in the age of streaming and whatnot, it's like, oh hey, look at my cool. I'm going to play the single player game and look at my cool horse armor.
Right. I mean that's fair. I mean I've modded up my Oblivion game so much just for streaming, and I can't catch up on that.
Right.
I still haven't been able to fix that crashing issue. It's a little ridiculous how fast we can burn through this mission.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not even really doing anything. I'm just kind of going out and collecting assets, yeah, like resources, since we have the booster.
Right, right.
Kind of let you handle most, because like you said, like, you know, like it's a lot cheaper and easier for you to fucking doma charge the ships than for me to go mount them. So
Yeah. And I got a guy actually manning my cannon for me, so. But the other side though of the asset store are the people that get slightly delusional over the quality of game that they're making using those assets.
right, like they have like very pretty visual assets, but then they can't create. They're making a rather dull game otherwise.
Right. Well, I was just thinking about Digital Extremes. Or not Digital Extremes, I'm sorry, Digital Homicide. My bad. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. The reason why I know about that company is because they got in a blood feud with Jim Sterling, who is a contrarian game reviewer.
Right.
He reviewed he reviewed one of their shooter games and just tore into it. And they filed $1 million lawsuit against him for defamation.
Right.
And then immediately lost.
Right.
Well, no, it turned into a shit show because then they wanted to file a lawsuit against everyone who had left a negative review of the game on Steam.
Right.
And then they tried to subpoena Steam for their player record for
right.
user information.
Right, so you can identify the people who left negative reviews, and yeah, like Valve was like, having, it's like, yeah, no, that would be, no one would buy anything from Valve after that.
Right, right, and Valve's solution was to ban them off the platform.
Right.
For harassment.
Right.
Oh my god, the guy who's gunning for me is awful.
They hit the engine.
It was like it went on for a long time. And like
right.
It got really petty with Jim Sterling too. Like it started with him doing a review of their game, him tearing into them, and then they released a video of them reviewing his review of their game.
Right.
And then it was just a whole bunch of ad hom.
Right.
And then Jim Sterling just leaned in and did a review of their review of his review of their game.
Right. It didn't stop getting meta for a very long time, huh?
I don't have much of an opinion about Jim Sterling. I just see him as a contrarian. He's just gonna do whatever he can to make controversy. That's what his goal is. Fine, whatever.
Right.
But don't start a trolling war with somebody like that.
Right, right. Like that. This. There's better uses of your time.
Like you're literally just feeding the troll at that point.
Right. Unless you have a really good marketing division that basically knows how to, like get, get use out of this type of attention.
Right, like, well, I mean, it did serve them in a sense because it did get their name out there. But
right,
then they got themselves banned off the platform immediately.
right, right.
Dejara says mainstream journalists still haven't learned that other people buy ink by the barrel too. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure where you're.
I think he's basically trying to say that like like the internet's basically giving everybody a platform who wants
right.
it.
Okay. Okay, I can see that.
I'm assuming a little bit here, but I'm sure Jara can fix me, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, like it's one of those things that, yeah, like poking it, especially like game review, which is like such a. I think we kind of talked about it before. The difference between movie reviews and movie critique, where we don't really have game critique, we have game reviews, which are the shallow, sad, cousin to critique.
This game offends my senses.
I mean, you deserve to be offended, to be honest.
Okay, Dejar says, old quote on antagonizing journalists, never annoy someone who buys ink by the barrel. Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Oh, okay.
I get what you're saying. Because they can have more words than you.
Right, right. But, but like I said, like, I think it is a valid point that, like, we, the internet is, it's been kind of a great equalizer in some ways. Where, like, you don't have to buy you don't have to buy ink by the barrel in order to get hurt.
And have 180 words. Or characters, sorry, not words.
Alright.
That's a lot of words.
Wow. Like most of a page.
Like Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, 180 characters.
But yeah, but I think that yeah, I think like like knowing like if you're gonna be making if you're gonna be using assets or assets, like understanding the limitations of it. But again, like I said, like you could potentially see like the business model of the asset store being a little exploitative, where people might be throwing money at assets, not quite realizing what they need.
Right, I can see that. But I would always say, like, the way I would suggest for people to get into that if they're trying to do like indie development is like try to make some fan games, like where you can reverse engineer a game into something for you, not even to distribute, just to like practice, understand what you're
right. Well,
make.
Right. Well, I mean, like for actual game development, like a lot of like, what developers say, because we don't say, hey, go rip off this other game as your first thing. So like when you write, like it's, authors don't say, hey, go ahead and write fanfic of my stuff, low quality fanfic, yeah, like but like for game development, it's like take a very simple game and make it, like go through the process, like don't worry about making a very complex game. Like like the classic example is basically like Pong. Like make Pong. Like just like like if you want to get into games, like go make Pong. Take take Unity, make Pong. Because like you like what you need to do is basically like a very simple elements of this. Basically, like like get stuff on the screen. Like register input. Like do collision, do movement, do like do the thing. Get the individual things. Like keep score. Like do a game loop. Do
Screen.
right, exactly. Like and like it doesn't even have to be super complex. Just like
You win.
but like if you do all these, right? If you do all these things though, then you understand the basics, and then it's like, okay, now implement your a simpler idea. Like do something a little more complex, but like don't go from obviously don't go from Pong to I'm gonna make a World of Warcraft clone. Like
Right.
Oof. Right. Like but like work up and like and sometimes sometimes like really simple games can like be really interesting. Like you look at a lot of puzzle games. Like there's a like puzzle games are really interesting in that they generally like are fairly simple games, but like they can be like really hard to do well with because like what was the game? Threes, I think it was. That was like one of the early kind of like hits on mobile phone. Then like actually I think it was like it might have been Flash first, and then got to mobile phone. But yeah, like everybody is making clones of that game.
It shows that I used to reach kids games programming on an Apple II Plus back in 1983. Surely a modern platform is easier? Oh,
I mean,
teach? That makes more sense.
I mean, to some extent, the problem is like is
ups and downs.
I mean, I guess. Well, I mean, I'm trying to kind of think of it, like a way to put it, like the Djar will understand. And like, I guess like programming today is a lot easier than it was in the programming in the '80s, right? Like like especially Apple II stuff. Like like we have modern compilers and linkers and modern IDEs and like it's a lot easier to program now. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's easier to teach programming. Like like the fundamentals are kind of still the same, and like you kind of have to focus on some things than the other. But like on the flip side, the tools, like understanding the tools, has become like both less useful and more useful. Ironically, I guess. Like if you're looking to do like really high performance stuff, like that's really difficult to do. But in general, programming, generalized programming has become easier.
Maybe we should do a podcast of you teaching me how to program.
Oh God. Only after I die I can go to hell.
I guess you just don't want to help me improve as a human. I get it.
I mean, as long as so much you can polish a turd.
Most projects have proven you can polish a turd pretty damn good.
Fair. No, but like, and so like to try to put it into like making games is easier in some ways because like about like like because you don't have to worry about like a lot of details. Like you don't know, you have to know what peek and poke are. For the real old school programmers out there. But on the flip side is like like if you look at the assets, the visual assets of a lot of Apple II games, I mean they were super simple. And so like some aspects are easier, but some aspects are a lot harder because like you can't just do 8x8 sprites and call it a day and and say okay I've made this game. That was completely acceptable in an Apple II world, but it was not acceptable in it's not acceptable in today. So like I mean, and this kind of goes to the heart of what we're talking about here with asset stores. Like, part of the reason why asset stores exist is, for this reason, because it is really hard um, to do like the visual aspects of games. And so, yeah, I think, like, it's I think there's still, like, it's like programming in general. There's still a lot of stuff you have to understand about programming that really hasn't changed, in the last, several decades. Similarly, there's a lot of stuff, even though, like, we got different tools and whatnot, there's a lot of stuff that has not significantly changed that you need to understand about game development. And these things, these fundamental things haven't gotten easier. Like, a lot of details to deal with. But a lot of the, like, the nuts and bolts and, like, the fundamental things you have to worry about and whatnot have not really gotten that easier. They're still as difficult as possible.
I'm trying to in my brain thinking unit.
Mm.
I'm correlating what you're describing to chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Where you go through general chemistry, maybe even like organic chemistry, and you're learning 100 years old techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we have some more modern technology that helps us determine certain things. Who the fuck jumped us?
Not I.
That little prick!
Mm.
He jumped us to... Okay, what the fuck?
Yeah. We can take a quick break and...
I hate
another...
people in Wheeljack.
Another one of those people that thought they had to go back to the dry dock to...
that.
It's not updating. Be right back.
Oh, okay. Oh, news. I'm overflowing with goodies. Whatever will I do? But anyways, like I was saying, in chemistry, when you're learning just general chemistry, you're learning, hundreds years old techniques, even though we have some technology to help with that.
Right.
Like, just random, we have like mass spectrometers now to help us determine the composition of materials into gases, solids into gases. And that saves us some hassle with determining the melting point of whatever we're trying to analyze, because the spectrometer will do that for us, and then it will analyze all the boiling points and melting points of all the components of the sample, so we don't have to go in and do that by eye anymore. But it's still on the same foundation of everything that has built up to making that work.
Mm.
As you were explaining coding, that's what I was thinking about.
Right, right, right. I mean, there's still some fundamentals you really have to kind of like, understand, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, uh, uh, like, yeah, I think that's probably a good thing. Like, we have better tools and whatnot, but like now you have to kind of learn to use these better, and more complex tools. Like I said, a mass spectrometer is a lot more complicated that we use than like beakers and flames and reactants and whatnot. But it is better. And so like like learning to use the tool. Like we have a lot more tools now, and I think I think in the case of programming and technology, like we've gotten a lot more complex. Oh yeah, because like network coding is not easy. I mean, it's not it's not super difficult. I mean, I don't think it's like tons more difficult than a lot of other aspects of programming. But like like understanding how to deal with compensating for latency and whatnot, and then like and like the other thing more recently has been like multi-threaded programming, which is like a complete mind fuck for people who basically kind of um uh for people who kind of like grew up in more kind of like traditional single threaded using single threaded.
We're coming up on 11. Do you just want to just hang out and chat for a little bit?
Yeah, let's we can just kind of like chatter and have fun.
Yeah. I'm just melting all these wreckages down now.
Yeah.
Thank you for following, Yeager. I appreciate it. Welcome to the channel. Now you get to deal with me forever.
Oh God, run!
I love the sentiment and the lack of enthusiasm in both of those exclamations.
I aim to please.
You're like Willy Wonka. No, don't.
I don't. Yeah.
Ocho says, I don't know if I can handle multiple moves. Never mind.
What's the best reactor?
Vidar, I want to say.
Vidar reactors.
Yeah. Vidar Mark III. It, like, I think it's the middle ground reactor where it gives you good avionics and good flux. Because it gives me 100 avionics and 100 flux when I have it fully upgraded. And then Zekti weapons. Zekti are the best weapons. Vidar, I think, are the best speed engines. And then Levon are the best capacity shield generators.
Okay.
But thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. I really needed this, to be honest. It's been a very rough weekend for me. So I really appreciate having you guys here.
And how does the what do you call it, the combining thing work?
Valence
fusion. Yeah.
You select your item, you valence fuse it, and then it'll be like it'll want to consume some acerite at first.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll notify if you have the asteroid. It won't notify you about it. But then it's like melding. It's like fusing mods where you select the parts that are the same as the one you want to fuse, and then it will combine the stats. And then
is it always better, or
what?
Is it always better?
Yes.
Okay.
It always makes it better.
So, do you have to, combine two Vidar, or can you combine like a Vidar and Levant, or what?
No, they have to be of the same type.
Okay, so two Vidar, you can't combine a Vidar and okay.
Right.
And so basically, it'll basically improve.
Right, until you reach
improve
whatever
the stats
the
of
hard
one.
cap is.
Gotcha.
So like, it took me like 3 or 4 Valence fusions to max out that shield, but it only took me like 2 to do like my pilot guns.
Gotcha.
So I think it does depend on the stats, but it's always just like a proportional increase. So it's worth doing the fusions. Like the
right.
stat increases are amazing.
Right.
And I'm 9, 10, 9, 8 now on my rankings.
Nice.
Probably should have set up to get 10 on the gunnery, but oh well. It's fine. So any massive hits from that tropical storm hit you?
I got a bit of rain yesterday, but I mean, in general, it wasn't too bad. So.
We got poured on, and we had a tornado warning for a little while.
Yeah, I heard there's some tornadoes landed in Maryland, I think it was.
Yeah. There I don't know if it actually touched down, but there's a tornado down in St. Mary's County. We got a take shelter warning where we are. But there wasn't a touchdown here. Oh, Mikey had all that too, but it passed right overhead of him too. Yeah,
I'm glad you're safe.
It got a little scary for a little bit up here. But we were fine. Everything's fine. We mostly just got waterlogged. It's actually a little sad. One of our rain gutters, we've never been able to keep a gutter on that corner of the house for whatever reason. So we just have a barrel that collects the water, and I had to run out and start siphoning the barrel out because it was getting full. And I got soaked. When a jacket claims to be weatherproof, it's more of a suggestion. You know,
there's certain limitations to how proof it can be, huh?
When something says proof, don't test that.
Right.
Take it at its word, but don't test it.
Don't push it too hard.
I mean, I was mostly dry. I think of what wetness I had got in through the collar because it doesn't have a hood. It's more of like a light rain jacket, not a monsoon rain jacket.
Right.
But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. I think we're good for tonight. Are you good?
I think I'm good, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Mikey Ocho says, lots of down trees and power lines here, but the worst is we have an invasive insect here, and the storm sent them all from the trees, so our house became covered in these insects.
Oof.
Ooh. Well, they made themselves vulnerable to some decisive action. You know where they are now. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching, for hanging out with us tonight. I think we're gonna cut the stream here. But I had fun. We meandered. Oh my god, we meandered.
I know. Everybody's probably pretty surprised by that.
I will be streaming again on spotted lanternflies. Oh yeah, I saw that, Pumpkin. I'm gonna look into that probably tomorrow. But yeah, thank you for posting that. Spotted lanternflies. I'm gonna look that up real fast. That sounds interesting. They're so pretty looking. It's a plant hopper that's indigenous to China, India, Vietnam, and Eastern Asia. It jumps more than it flies. Host plants include vapes, stone fruit, malus species. Those preferred hosts is not saying that word. It's a Latin taxonomy, and I don't feel like fumbling that right now. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Mikey. They're very pretty, but very damaging. I gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you guys. We're going to go raid Surian, who's playing Sea of Thieves. Oh, yeah. I'll be streaming again on Thursday. We're going to be doing more Final Fantasy 11. I'm going to be working on my alt some more. And hopefully I'm awake for my own stream time, because I don't really know.
What is a sleep schedule?
What?
What even is a sleep schedule for you?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I don't know. So, we're going to get right Surian. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Sleep is temporary death.
Yes.
And go give Surian some love. He's a fantastic streamer and a good friend, and he deserves it. So, bye.
Have a good one.
I am going to be calling this the last podcast. I don't believe that GrimTalk can function without Psy. The show worked because of our chemistry with each other and our ability to understand what the other was trying to say most of the time. You can see a lot of times we're completing sentences when we get hung up. We didn't prepare that in advance for the stream. That's just our chemistry, and I don't think if I got someone else for the podcast, it would work. He was he was in such a unique position where he could talk about the game industry without worrying about repercussions of violating NDAs or company policies or being sued. We could talk about things in going on in the industry that game developers don't talk about because they're worried about being sued over it or being reprimanded by the companies they're under contract with. I don't think I'd be able to find another game developer who could talk about this stuff and who he's just irreplaceable. That's just it. I can't replace him, and I'd rather the show end on a high note than try to drag it forward without him. I'm going to try to upload more of the podcasts in the future, but this was the last one. This is the last Grim Talk featuring Psychochild that was recorded. I have a lot of other videos to go through, and I don't know when I'll be able to do them. But I will be backing them up, and they will be uploaded eventually. Maybe not with additional recordings on top of them like I'm doing now, but they will be archived eventually. It's just gonna take me a while. Thank you for watching this video. If you're still here, I know it's been a long trip, but thank you. I do appreciate you being here with me. I do stream on Twitch. You can follow my link in the description, and it will have a schedule of my stream times. I try to stream at least 3 times a week. And moving forward, I am trying to do more group and party game content with friends. If you're interested in contributing to party games or to hanging out in the Twitch chat or on the Discord, the links will be in the description for that. I guess the last thing to say is just I wouldn't be here on YouTube or on Twitch if it wasn't for Psy. He was actually the one who bought me my editing software and my sound editing package. He was the one that encouraged me to try to make shows and try to do something creative. I didn't really have a direction before I met him. I was just kind of going with the motions. I dropped out of college because I just can't afford it. And I've never really had a drive to do anything specific. But I had this dumb idea of trying to stream on Twitch and try to do some things on YouTube here and there, and then I met Sai and he told me to do it, and he gave me the tools to do it, and I'm forever grateful to him for that. I know he knew how much he meant, but it's hard knowing that I'll never be able to tell him. Thank you for watching.